Okay, so now we're going to get ready to cut out all our pattern pieces. So there's a few things you're going to need. One, pair of scissors. Use whichever set and pair that you feel comfortable with using and cutting. Optionally, you could use you can use one of these. This is a rotary cutter. I'm actually more comfortable with this than I am with scissors. So blade comes out, you do your cut, retracts, and so I use these a lot. If you do use a rotary cutter, you're going to want to use a cutting mat with it. You'll see this in a lot of my shots. They're usually the ones I use are green. You can see them in grays. And the reason why they're self-healing is when you cut through it with the blade, the cut and the mat will heal itself, and you can reuse the mat over and over and over again. Comes in really handy. They can last for years. The other thing I'll use is this is a guide for my using quilting, and I'll use this for the straight edge. When I'm making long straight cuts, I'll use my rotary cutter on this, and it helps to guide me so I can make my straight cuts, because I'm not really that perfect. You want to get some of this as well. This is called oak tag board or oak tag paper. You'll probably know it more as a manila folder. This comes in really handy with patterns, and it's used professionally, and it's really easy to get. You can buy it as a pack from your local office supply store. You might find it, I found some before at secondhand stores, and you can buy it really, really cheap. Or if you want to get it for free, wherever you're working, they're probably throwing out the old file folders, and grab them up and take them. These are great. They last forever, make great pattern keepers. I'll use these sometimes. I'll make copies of my patterns. If it's a pattern I'm going to reuse again, like for shirts for myself, or I make shirts for my brother when it comes time for Christmas or his birthday, and I'm going to make him a shirt. I just pull out the pattern. I already have everything ready to go, and I can just start copying and cutting out my pieces. The other thing you're going to want is you're going to have to punch out some holes. So get a hole punch. You can use, when you're cutting out the holes, you can use the scissors if you want. You can do it that way. For the longest time, I just got a sharp pencil and poked the holes. Didn't work all that great. You can buy these. If you plan to do this for a while and plan to make a lot of projects, you're going to punch a lot of holes. And you can buy these in the leather section. It comes a set. It costs you about $10, $12. It's worth investing in one of these for the long term, and make you punch the holes a lot faster. So with that, I think we have everything we need, and we're ready to start cutting some patterns. So I'm going to pull all that out, and they're all on tissue. Unfold all that. We're going to do the cutting. Now, I'm going to do this in, actually, 3 steps to this. Number 1, the first thing I'm going to do is what's called a gross cut. This is a tissue where I'm going to cut it out, but I'm not going to cut directly on the line of the pattern just yet. I'm just going to cut out these big old block sections like this. And I'm just going to separate all the big pieces, sheets of paper. I'm going to make them to smaller patterns, and I'm going to work with that first. So that's what I'm going to do first. So I'm going to cut that down and cut out those gross, what I call gross cutouts of the patterns. So I'm going to do those gross cuts, and I'll get to that. Want to watch? Here's what it looks like. Okay, quick note. I noticed while I was doing the cutting out these pieces that one of the pieces, which is actually number two, there are two of them. And the reason is because of the sizes. Remember, that goes back to our bust size again, that chest measurement. One of these does size 36 and 40. The other one does up to 42. Remember, I'm working on a 42. So I need the other one and not this one. What I'm going to do, I'm going to set this one aside. I'm not going to cut it anymore because I don't want to accidentally cut my material using the wrong size pattern. So I'm going to put that aside, put it out of the way, make sure it's gone and not going to interfere with anything that I'm going to do with the rest of my fabrics. I don't want to make a mistake. Let's eliminate that now. Okay, so I got all those cut out, and this next step sounds kind of weird, but it actually does make a difference. I'm going to iron these. And the reason why I'm going to do that, the folds, they come out of the package, they've been folded. You got folds, you have creases, you have a lot of these wrinkles in there, and sometimes they really do interfere with the lines of the project. We don't want that. So I actually do break out the iron and iron this and iron all these, get those creases out, make the pattern nice and smooth and flat. That way when we lay them out to cut it, it'll all look better and it'll be more accurate. We're not going to have problems. So break out the iron. I use I use whatever temperature will work best. My particular iron is a level number 4, and I think that's just below Cotton's. Is that going to burn my paper? Is what you're thinking? No, it won't. Paper burns at 451 degrees Fahrenheit. How do I know that? Sounds like a good title to a book. Anyway, iron the papers. It's not going to catch on fire. Remember, we are ironing. We are not pressing. So the difference, ironing, you're moving the iron back and forth on your material. Pressing, you're holding it in one place and letting it stay there. That's going to burn your material. We don't want to do that. All we got to just iron, get those creases out. So I'm going to go break the iron. If you want to see this, I'll get an example. This is what kind of it looks like. Okay, so I've done the gross cut. I've ironed all my patterns. Now I'm ready to do my final cuts of the patterns. This is where you're going to cut on the lines and cut out the pieces and get them all set. There are these little triangles on your patterns. Those are important and because they're to help to line up our pieces later. Some people will cut these out on the patterns, and I find it just really annoys me to do that. So I just cut them straight across. I will make marks when I lay out my patterns. I'll show you when we get there. I will make my marks there so I can cut my triangles, and that's going to be important when we start assembling, matching up all our pieces. All right, time to break out my cutting materials and supplies, and I'm going to cut these out. Alrighty, so now I'm going to show you how to prepare this particular part of the pattern. This is an example. This is for the collar, and it has this center fold line on here. And the idea again is I would lay on my fabric, this would lay on the fold, and then I would cut this out. But I don't like doing that. When I have my 60-inch material, I would have to lay it out and mark my pattern, flip it over, and draw the other side of the pattern. You can see that could be a problem. I've had times where I didn't get it lined up correctly. I had to do it several times over. Not very efficient. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my tag oak board and I'm going to make a copy of this. So this doesn't quite fit here. I'm going to find a, this is a middle folder, and I'm going to fold it in half already. I'm going to lay down my pattern on the fold, and best I can get it. This tab is not going to fit there. This piece is just a little bit wider than I have space anywhere on here for. That's okay. I'll show you how we fix that here in a minute. Of course, the other thing I could do, I can go this way, fold it over this way. Nope, I think this is going to be the best way here. Doesn't fit. Okay, so my pattern doesn't fit anywhere on there. So this is what I'll do is I'm going to get another piece, and I'm going to double it up. So I'm going to cut one of these in half. And I'm going to put these pieces together here. And I'm just going to tape two pieces together. When I get larger pattern pieces, I do this quite often because this board is just not big enough to fit large enough to fit a bigger pattern, especially like if I'm doing like my lapels. I would have to do that in order to get my entire lapel to fit. If you're getting those sleeves or anything longer, I can put 3 or 4 of these together, or even 4 or 6 of these together in order to make it big enough to fit my patterns. So this is not unusual. Okay, taped it in the middle there. Now I can set my piece on here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this in half, get my collar. I'm going to weight it down a little bit and use my straight edge here. I'm going to draw in and copy my pattern over. Now, I'm not going to be very good at drawing this line. Not too worried about it. So I'll show you what I do. I mentioned I'm not an artist. I'm going to mark right where my corners meet, as well as here and here. I'm going to mark where my triangles are, as well as all corresponding dots and such. So all corresponding marks, make sure you get all those transferred over. Okay, so I got that done. And as you can see, it's really bad. Drawing this line here again. And then I'm going to get my scissors. And this line is well enough that I can probably follow it. Now when I open it up, now I have a better pattern piece to work with. I will have to transfer my triangles, my alignment marks, because those are going to be important. And so now I'll get my punch and my scissors. I will cut those out and make sure everything lines up. All right, won't show it here. I'm going to use my punch and I'll mark that there. So while I still have my pattern out, the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mark this, because I want to make sure that I don't lose track of what piece this is. So this is number 5, and this is S9252. This is the collar, and it says here cut 2 on fabric. Alrighty, there we are. This also says cut 1 on fold of interfacing. So that's actually be our next piece. So I'm going to use this again, and I'm going to make some of the, using the oak tag board, I'm going to make some other patterns for the interfacing. And I'll explain that here in a second. So right now, that's the basic side of this. I'm going to show you how to prepare a pattern for the interfacing. Okay, so now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to prepare a pattern piece for my interfacing. Why am I doing this? The interfacing, as I explained before, has 2 sides. There's one side that has the adhesive on it. It's kind of bumpy, and the other side that's really smooth. When we apply this, we're going to be using an iron, and we're going to iron it onto our piece of fabric. So imagine this is our piece of fabric, and let's say that you made a piece of interfacing and exactly to the same size, and you lay that onto the back of your fabric. What's going to happen, it's not going to be exactly the same size, even though if you think you're being perfect, it's not going to be. It's going to be a little bit off, and that little bit off, it might end up, I'll exaggerate it, that little piece that's off might end up on your ironing board. So you have your interfacing and you think it's perfect. It's a little bit off. You iron it down. That's going to stick to your ironing board. And then you're going to pull your fabric and there it's going to rip off and you're going to have a spot on your ironing board. That's just going to gum up your ironing board. It's going to get on your iron. It's going to make a big mess. So we're going to adjust this. We're going to make a pattern, and it's going to be slightly smaller than our fabric pattern, and that's so that way we can line up our interfacing better. So that's why we do this step. It'll make for much less headache later on in a ruined iron and ironing board. So I take 2 pieces together so I can make my piece long enough. This doesn't fit right, but I don't worry about it. And I'm going to lay my piece on here and going to just copy it. Yeah, it's never perfect. Now this is just interfacing. I don't have to worry about the location holes. I don't have to worry about the alignment dots or alignment triangles. Not really applies here. Doesn't apply here. So I have this. Next I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in my ruler. I'm just going to mark off maybe 1/4 of an inch all the way around. 1/4 of an inch all the way around. Or I can, what's nice about the ruler, I can do this. You can go 1/8 of an inch. You just want to make it slightly smaller than your original piece. And it doesn't have to be exact. The idea is if it's smaller than the original piece, when it comes time to line it all up, you don't have to worry about it as much. Besides, when we stitch this together, we have what's called a seam allowance. This is going to end up in our seam allowance. It will not get in the way of our actual paper or fabric and our finished garment. It won't be in the way. So I'm just going to quickly sketch this out here. And I'm usually not too worried about being too accurate here. Okay, I'm going to cut this out and then I'm going to mark it. I'm going to use a red pen on this one. And I always use red on my interface pieces. And that's all across the board. Every time I see red, I know it's interfacing. Okay, so this is number 5. S9252. This is for the collar. And I need to just cut one of the interfacing. I don't have to write interfacing because it's red. I already know it's going to be for interfacing. All right, I'll cut this out. Again, I don't have to worry about the alignment marks on this because it's just for the interfacing. And that's it. So that's how we make our pattern. We're going to have to do this for several pieces. And if we look at our pattern instructions, it actually tells us which ones. Because when we get to our layouts, for our cutting layouts, you'll see on one of these pages, it'll mention interfacing. And it says on here, uses for pieces 2, 4, 5, 6, and 8. So I'm going to find those pieces, 2, 4, 5, 6, and 8. If you want to know what those are, front lapel, the collar stand, and the sleeve bands. Those all get interfacing. So I'm going to make an interfacing pattern for each one of those pieces, and then our pattern should be ready. Okay, so let's review step number 7. This was really, it's not very difficult. Didn't take too much time. And I think in all, this took me about an hour to get everything done. But step number 7 is prepare the patterns. The first thing we did is did a gross cut. Make sure just get all the pieces separated from this big sheet of paper. Then I ironed all the pieces, get all those wrinkles and creases out of there. Then finally I made my final cuts right on the lines, and now all my pieces are sorted and ready to go. By sorted, I put the bigger pieces in one pile, smaller pieces on top, and that way they don't blow away. It gets kind of warm in the studio, and I don't turn on the fan because I don't want to blow my tissue papers all over the place. But I do put a weight on top of them just to keep them safe. I don't want something unexpected to come by and blow us all away. And so now my patterns are all set and ready to go. All I need now is my materials. So as I wait for my material to arrive, I think I'm going to go on to step number 8, and that is because I do have my muslin, and I mentioned that earlier. You can have muslin, you can use some paper, but we'll go into that in the next video. But yeah, I think I'm going to go on to step number 8, and our next video, step number 8. So thank you. See you later.